What Father's Day card would Prince Harry pick is something that randomly popped into my mind a couple of weeks ago. I've been experiencing burnout the last couple of weeks, and one of the frustrating things is I really haven't been able to write. But I had a night away Sunday night, which is something I think all mothers should be able to do quarterly. When we take over the world, we need to write that into our constitution. And I was able to enter a flow state of writing that was unexpected, unanticipated, but I rode the wave. And it was one of those times where words just poured out of me in a way that I could barely keep up, furiously typing with all the thoughts that were going through my head. And while what I ended up writing does have Prince Harry as the entry point, it's really not about Prince Harry. It's about complicated relationships with parents. It's about coming to accept who your parent is and deciding if you can have a relationship with who they are. It's up now live on my Substack, which is Meredith Constant. There's a link in my bio. But I thought I'd read a little bit of it here, if that's okay. Which Father's Day card would Prince Harry pick on letting go of the dad you don't have and getting to know the one you do? Quote, "Not that Pa hadn't always been a bit checked out, always given an air of being not quite ready for parenthood, the responsibilities, the patience, the time. Even he, though a proud man, would have admitted as much. But single parenthood, Pa was never made for that," end quote. The way I wasn't ready for Prince Harry to read me for filth 30-ish pages into his memoir Spare. I thoroughly didn't expect to find common ground with a prince, but stranger things have happened. As I perused the aisles for a Father's Day card this year, I found myself looking around and wondering how my fellow card-seeking comrades were faring in this venture. Was it a pleasant task? Another thing off the list? An emotionally charged exercise that reminds them of what they don't have? The cards that don't fit outweigh the ones that do. A new thought entered my mind this year. Which card would Prince Harry choose for his father, King Charles III? Would he pick up the Mr. Fix-It and roll his eyes at the very thought? Does he accidentally grab the grill master, beer-guzzling, lazy boy-loving dad card, staring with bewilderment that anyone actually has this kind of mythical father? The I love you dad cards that would cause distress for all involved because you've never been like that. Or does he select the dad who's always been there card, a low ache in his chest willing it to be true? Where are the cards that acknowledge the complicated reality many people have with a parent? Unlike Charles, my father was under no obligation to continue the bloodline, but perhaps socially and biologically, he felt compelled to enter into this tradition. I wasn't the spare, but similar to Harry, I was a human with a personality and likes and dislikes that baffled my father. I was intellectually curious with a 4.1 GPA in high school, involved in musical theater. My father made it through high school by the seat of his bell-bottoms and was a varsity soccer player. We did not speak the same language, and honestly, my father didn't attempt to learn. He seemed to like the concept of fatherhood more than the actual practice. Children were something to trot out to new girlfriends to score points. And then there were the issues that felt insurmountable. I vacillated between rage and despondency in my early 20s. When I finally got to the point where ignoring it was too painful, I started seeing a therapist. During one of our first sessions, my therapist asked me to lay out everything I wanted in a father. After I rattled off a grocery-sized list, she replied, "Seems like a nearly impossible standard for someone to live up to." She wasn't arguing for compromise. She was suggesting I see my father for who he is, what he is, and let go of the father I wanted. Then determine if we could have a relationship that respected my boundaries. The first section of Prince Harry's book could have been called Man Goes to Therapy. You do not come to terms with your father the way Harry has without a damn good therapist. I can't speak for Prince Harry, but eventually I was finally able to mourn the father I don't have and get to know the one I do. My dad gave me a birthday card once in my late teens that lamented over the years lost. Years where he couldn't tuck me in at night, read me a book, give me a kiss on the forehead. He could have done that. He didn't. And I don't say that with anger. Looking back, I wonder if that was my father's way of mourning the father he couldn't be, of telling me, in his own way, he knew too. There was a trip in September to visit my father's side of the family. As I breathed in the air that brought me scents of hydrangeas and notes of Cape Cod Bay, my dad asked me if I wanted to go on a motorcycle ride. Surprising both of us, I agreed. My dad's love of motorcycles was a big point of contention during my childhood. He bought one when he and my mom separated, and the one non-negotiable rule was that we were never to ride on that motorcycle. Nervously, I paced the renovated kitchen at my aunt and uncle's house, an old mug from Captain Parker's, filled to the brim with fresh coffee by my uncle, who was up notoriously early no matter the day, waiting for my father to arrive, waiting for the revving of the engine that would announce his arrival. When we finally met each other in the driveway, he handed me a spare helmet, and I handed over my trust. We hugged the curves of Cape Cod's coast and stopped at Race Point Lighthouse to get a glimpse of the whales, sadly none, and stared at the vast, magnificent nothingness, ate fresh oysters on the half shell and lobster rolls in Provincetown, sunk our toes into the sand, and grabbed a cone from a homemade ice cream shop, vanilla chip for him, coconut for me. Riding back, I realized why this hobby was so important to my dad and what it did for him. It gave him community, while still enjoying solitude. Like my dad, I often need a break from socializing and retreat. Biking is a solo activity. You're in a pack, but very much aware of your individuality. We didn't speak much on that trip. I know, motorcycle rides are notorious for meaningful conversations. But we did make accidental progress. We didn't need to speak. We were enjoying a shared experience with my dad's signature tunes, we both have a love for classic rock, blasting out of his stereo, and we let the music do the talking. Perhaps we do have a shared language after all. The annual pilgrimage to Target's Father's Day card aisles was still an internal struggle, as it always is. But then I stumbled down an aisle where Father's Day ended and kid birthday cards, marching along in numerical order, begin. But for half a dozen cards. I picked up a card with an orange background, a motorcycle whizzing across the page. It reminded me of that day, where my father and I spent half a day together, just the two of us. And for once, a Father's Day card fit. Well, if not like a puzzle piece, nearly perfect. Well, I ended up reading the whole thing, but I hope if you're interested, you go and read it yourself on my Substack and subscribe. It's free. And if this is a complicated time of year for you, I see you, I feel you, you are not alone.